Welcome to another episode of the Following Films podcast. Today I'm thrilled to have the incredibly talented comic book artist Eric Henson join us. With a career spanning years of captivating artwork and an eye for dynamic storytelling, Eric has brought to life some of the most iconic characters and breathtaking visuals in the world of comics. His work blends intricate detail with raw emotion, creating pages that not only tell stories, but make you feel them. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Eric. So then how many weeks a year are you spending on the road doing cons?
Well, this year is the first year that I've kind of embraced doing shows a lot more. I usually only did like one or two shows a year.
Really?
Yeah, I tried to stay in the studio and just do the work.
Okay.
But this year I decided, it's kind of like the Super Bowl for artists. We work in this dark one-person basement and we never get out and see people. And then when you get out here and meet fans or people that appreciate your work, it's kind of rejuvenating to go back into that dark dungeon again and know why you do it.
There you go. Well, it's that combination. I'm assuming there's collaboration that has to happen between artists and writers and, with creatives when you're doing like a variant cover or anything like that or what.
All the time.
So that part of it, there is a connection there, but you're right. You are on your own, essentially. I'm assuming most of this is Zoom or email.
Most of it is just either through social media, through email. I mean, there was once upon a time where artists got studios together and bounced ideas off of each other. And there are still people that do that. Unfortunately, I don't know any of them. And none of them have invited me to their studios. So I work pretty much in isolation. And then I coordinate, with all the different parties that need to make a comic happen, all through email for the most part. So like I talk to my inker on the phone sometimes, and he's actually come and visited me and stayed at my house. But that's just the one person in the industry. Right. It's rare.
So where do you live?
I live in the Phoenix area.
Oh, so you're local.
Now I am, yeah. I moved from Oklahoma City a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And I was in the Air Force and I retired from there and came here. So
how does that transition happen from the Air Force to renowned comic book artist?
Renowned.
Hey, by the way, you're the Furiosa, the Lady Death. That's as good as art gets to me. So I love that cover. That is brilliant. I love that. So yes, in my eyes, renowned. Well, renowned by one at the very least.
At least. It was a kind of a smooth transition because I started doing it before I got out of the military. I had to say no to a lot because of time management. So I did small bits and pieces. But when it was time for me to retire, the transition was easy because I was already working on a book and I had done my own, created my own book at the time. And so it was pretty seamless, actually. I actually was a part of a Comic-Con movie.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. Yep. And that was all in conjunction with the Air Force because for me to appear in that film, especially in uniform, the Air Force, like every other branch, has a Hollywood office that has to approve you to appear in, people who go on Maury and all those problematic shows. They have to approve you to show up in uniform. So, yeah, the Air Force was always very supportive. And I kind of knew what I would do when I got done because that was my path before I got in. And it just took a detour and did something else. But when I was done, I kind of came back to where I started.
Well, it's one of those things when I saw that film, you're obviously at that transition point in your career and to see where you are today. Yeah. And that's just so incredible to see that sort of that growth in that amount of time. And there was so much that was uncertain at that. Is that something that you look back at the way that I look at my high school poetry and A Trapper Keeper, that there's a little bit of that's kind of vulnerable, or are you okay with that?
I think we should be interviewing you. You used to have poetry from high school and A Trapper Keeper?
Of course. Who the hell doesn't?
I don't even know what Trapper Keeper is, where mine are. No, I don't know how so the film, it all happened so fast, and I remember more about the behind the scenes of it than, what took place on camera. And I remember the people I met and all the different personalities. That stuff sticks with me. But yeah, the work definitely has grown. I don't go back and look at it kind of for that reason. Like, I don't want to see that again.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I feel that way about work I did yesterday. As soon as I'm done with it, immediately, I absolutely don't want to see it again. I don't want to look at it. I appreciate that other people appreciate it, but I like the space in between drawings because that's where I believe you actually grow and get better. You know, rarely during a drawing or during a cover or during a page, during the process, am I actually getting better. It's when I stop, sit back, look at it and realize what I should do the next time. That's kind of where growth happens in between each piece. So yeah, I don't spend too much time. When it's done. I just kind of move on.
There's something in being creative. There's always going to be flaws in your work that you're going to see that other people might not see. The best way I think I've heard it personally described is that sometimes a broken nose is what makes you handsome. So there's these things that the flaws that you see might be that thing that somebody loves in the piece. And so when people are bringing work up to you to have them sign and they love something that you might feel a little bit uncomfortable with, how do you reconcile those two things?
I just accept that once I've created it, it's not mine anymore. It's what's the point of making art that only I can look at? So once I put it out there into the world, it belongs to the viewer. And I learned that when I did traditional art, when I was in high school, I used to do gallery shows and I used to do all these paintings. And I wasn't really a fan of that art scene, but I would stand in the gallery showing and never saying who I was and listen to people talk about what the artist is trying to say, what he meant. And I'd listen and I'd be like, nope, not even that deep. So I would offer my opinion just not as the artist. I never revealed who I was. I just said, hey, maybe the artist is trying to say this. And they'd be like, no, that's ridiculous. I've done this for years. And I just walk away. I'm like, okay, because people look at your art, no matter what you do, whatever creative thing, they look at your art through the lens of how they see the world. So it's not really up to me, you know, so I just appreciate that they appreciate it. I don't get it. Just like my wife. She looked at me and decided, he's a good one to marry. I wouldn't have made that choice, but I trust her judgment.
You trust her judgment, but then she's made a really questionable choice. And my wife has made a very questionable choice as well in marrying me. Like something's off with her. Yeah. Something can't be right.
I don't even know why it's tradition that we get to propose. Why do we we can't even decide which shirt to wear. That's a horrible way to make a life decision. They should be doing the choosing and inviting us because it would probably be a good idea at that point.
I think my wife had made that choice.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, but before. So we got there. It just took me a minute to catch up. That's all. But 15 years later, I'm still playing catch up.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. How long have you been married for, man?
Going on 20.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Wow. So how do you deal with or travel with now?
Horribly.
Okay.
I do it as a necessity, but I've got a kind of a system down. I have, I do shows that I can get to by driving a lot, but like I said, I'm starting to kind of spread my wings and fly a lot more places. I don't mind the travel. I don't like being away from my kids. No, I don't like being away from my wife that much, but I'm sure they enjoy the break. And I do tend to get a little bit of work done on books that I'm working on in the hotel room, doing a lot of work. So, I mean, it's kind of nice. I think earlier in my life when my kids were smaller, I liked it a lot less.
Yeah.
But now I do kind of enjoy it. I got one, in college, and one in high school and one in elementary school, however that worked. But because they're more spread out, they can kind of help each other. And, we don't have to be the ones doing everything. So it does allow me to travel more. But I like it. I like meeting the people. I like not just the fans, I mean, just the other creators and interviewers and people the staff, especially that make the con happen. The people who literally have to stand there all day, just standing. And there's some of the people I have the most fun talking to.
It is a thankless job putting these things on.
It is. I remember I was doing Colorado Springs Comic Con just last week, and I remember seeing this lady standing in the corridor behind the exhibition hall. And every time I went to the green room or to the bathroom, she was the same lady standing there. I was like, I've had like 3 breaks. I was like, do you want a chair? I brought her a chair. And she's like, no, I can't. I'm not supposed to sit down. And I was like, well, I'm sorry. Yeah, they do a pretty tough job. And so many of them are just volunteering.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So I try to, like, at the end of the show, especially if there's somebody I've been talking to a lot, I try to give them a print or give them some art or something just to make it worthwhile.
Well, it's that thing that a lot of, like you said, volunteering, they're doing it so they can get a pass for the festival for the 3-day or whatever that is. They just want to be involved in it on some level. And that's a level of dedication that's beyond me. I don't have that in me.
Well, I appreciate them. So.
But so then the thing that I always hate, because I travel a lot with work, it's the day part of it is great. When it's filled up, I'm working. It's the moment when my head's about to hit the pillow. That's when it's hard for me.
Yeah.
And it's the being away and being disconnected, getting on the phone. I have a 14-year-old. I try to be connected with him on the phone. Right. If I'm traveling, that doesn't really happen. The 8-year-old will jump on with me all night long, but the 14-year-old, not so much.
Yeah.
But having that connection, it's just, I know codependency is a bad word, but I need those people in my life.
That's why you had, that's why you had the kids, to have them, not to be distant from them. So I get it. I understand. I think that my kids, since they were young, two of them were young when I started doing this. They're just used to it. And also because of the nature of what I do, even though I'm traveling and I'm away, even when I'm there, I have to cut off certain hours and say, okay, from 10 to 8, because it takes about 9 hours a day for a page.
Sure.
And you have to try to keep a rate of about a page a day. So that's a tremendous amount of time. When you get in the car and go to work and they don't see you, they kind of expect it. But when they can see your face and you have to pretend you're not there and tell them to, that's a different kind of self-imposed distance that I think helped train them a little bit. And it's for when I'm physically not there.
That makes sense.
As sad as that sounds.
That process, do you find yourself ever working a dead end?
In what way?
Like you're starting something, you're starting the concept, the idea, and then you get in an hour, 2 hours, and then it's just not where you wanted it to be and feel like you have to reevaluate?
All the time. That's the best thing to do. It rarely works at first. I mean, constantly going back and revising it over and over and over again gets me to a point where I'm happy with it. But there are times that you have to get up and just walk away. You have to step away, and typically overnight if you can. Because when you do struggle with something over and over and over again, when you come back the next morning, it just becomes obvious. It becomes clear. It's like trying to paint on a mural that you're standing 2 feet away from. You can't really see it as a whole until you step back. And that stepping back for comics is just taking a day, breathing, sliding it over, doing something else, doing a commission, something that there isn't as much pressure to do to get into a groove. And then there are times where I can't get into it because of external forces, like phone keeps ringing, or those kind of distractions, or a kid forgot glasses at school and I have to go drive them. But I always look at it like the people in my life are not centered around my plan for the day at all. I am involved in their lives. I'm involved there, and there's really a bigger, greater plan going on. And I can't get mad when I can finally see how I fit into it. Before I woke up thinking it's about me, that's not true. I fit into the tapestry of something. So then something happens, and then I see how I fit into the tapestry that day. Just accept it. It's not meant for you to work 10 hours today. It's meant for you to help your kid.
It's just that's the priority of that day. And then, like you said, you get some distance from the work that you're doing in that moment, and it gives you perspective that you wouldn't have had otherwise. It's like, I'm a terrible artist, but even probably worse musician, but I enjoy trying to play.
Right.
And when I get just buried in something and I'm unable to get through it, just taking a day off and then coming back to it, suddenly it works, it clicks, and it happens. And it's, writing works that way for me too, where I get stuck on something and there's just, I can't move forward with it, but just having perspective and distance is so helpful. I think it's every field has that to some degree.
Just stepping back and taking a look. We overthink stuff too much. And I think stepping away helps you. So I literally like to forget what I've drawn. I try to, because that's the only way that I can look at it as a person looking at it for the first time, which is what makes all the mistakes obvious. So shortcut to that is asking your wife, hey, does this look right? Because she'll be quick to tell you no. Because it's really easy for her to see that. But there's this weird merging of what's in my head and what's in the page, and I'm somehow merging both. But the person standing next to me, they don't have the displeasure of seeing what's going on in my head, so they're not hindered by it. So sometimes I just absolutely have to do that. And I think that's something that's cool about working with other artists in a studio, like just, having like your co-working situations, because they can be that eye and they're actually skilled at art. So
yeah. Well, they can see things. I mean, it's good to have eyes that have no idea what you're doing.
Right.
Look at something and they give sometimes a more honest appraisal. An actual artist, when they look at your stuff, they can see technique that can impress another artist, but maybe it doesn't translate what you're trying to get across sometimes.
Most of the time, they're just telling you what they would do, which is valuable. But if I'm trying to become, peak me, it may have a small piece of you in there, but it's probably, I would prefer, I think my best art critiques come from my wife, because she does not care about me thinking, like she doesn't care about, me knowing the truth. That's a great asset if you don't take it personally. But there are times when I'll do something, I'll be so proud of it, and she'll look at it and just eviscerate it. She'll be like, "You spent all day on that," and I just think to myself, can you do even a corner of this drawing? But then you have to halt yourself, because that's not the point. For those who can see art, you don't even need two eyes. If you have a single working eye, you are qualified to critique art.
It's the amazing thing about all creative mediums.
Mm-hmm.
They get judged by people who don't understand them frequently, and they have a very specific thing that they want out of them. And if it doesn't come out, it doesn't translate that. And it's again that idea that you have to let go of it as the artist, because you can't control what people are bringing to the table when they're interpreting your art.
Exactly. Here's an example that directly relates to comics. A lot of pencilers, which I traditionally am, even though I do ink my own stuff and starting to do it more and more, they're auteurs. So they want to see that process through from beginning to end in their mind. In real life, they're getting paid to pencil. So what a lot of people do, they try to work with people who they like, who accent their style. And I understand that. But so many times, especially when you're not really a renowned comic artist and people aren't really taking your opinion into consideration, you're a freelance work for hire guy, you don't really get the luxury of picking, hand choosing. Hey, I want to have this person. I want to have Scott Williams take a break from Jim Lee and ink me today. It's not going to happen. So I had to learn early on how to detach. Once I've done my part, I've done it. And now I'm handing it to another artist. I don't want to tell that artist how to do art. If they interpret it different than I would have done it, then guess what? I should have learned how to ink, and I should have become a colorist and just done it myself. But there are times when I look at it and go, I absolutely would not have approached it that way. And I don't necessarily like it at first glance. But then I step back and look at it and say, okay, well, that digital painter, this is them learning how to get to where they need to be. And I don't try to obsess over it, because I can't control it. I put it out into the world. Now, if I have a choice of colors, I definitely choose. But if I don't have one, I'm not going to worry about it.
Well, you can't. And you're doing that also, though. When you're taking pages and you're translating that to an image, you're interpreting that. Yeah. And so the writer could be looking at the images that you create and say, we had this conversation, but what you did, it's not what I had in my brain.
Yeah, what's cool about writers is because a lot of them are not artists, so they're just more forgiving. They'll just go, oh, this is better than what I thought. Yeah. But from artist to artist, we tend to be a little harder on each other. But yeah, I'm sure I've disappointed many a writer. I'll just look at a script and it'll be a very intricate scene, and I just go through it and I go, nope, not drawing that, not drawing that, not drawing that. And then I'm like, gotta come up with a really good reason, a storytelling reason why that's not necessary. I mean, it is valid because you want to give the reader the information they need to progress the story. If it's not really, really necessary, you have to learn the economy of line. And what I think Darwin Cook was really good at that. The people who love Batman the Animated Series, Bruce Timm's, like their style on that is, look, I'm giving you exactly the number of lines and colors you need to understand what's going on, and I'm going to let your brain, which I trust, do the rest of the work.
There's no fat in that animation. It is it is as lean as it could possibly be. They play with shadow so much and leave so much to your imagination, and it's beautiful though. Yeah. I think that there's certain artists that work where they have incredibly elaborate, detailed work that you could get in with a microscope and start picking up details that you never would see on first glance. Yeah. I don't know how much that progresses the story. Yeah. One's not right or wrong to me, right? But I tend to lean more towards I'm moved by things that are not distracting from, that the art is invisible to me, where it's just that's how you had to tell that story was with that image is how I think about it.
It's a balance. I mean, some of my favorite artists are those people who have these really intricate, they just do all these little tick marks and lines and they're really noodling away at it. And I admire like their craft.
Yeah.
I think like Nick Bradshaw, Arthur Adams, these are people who every time I look at their work, I just think, man, I should probably quit drawing. But that's and then I look at some artists who are okay, but they tell a really good story, and it is, both of them inspire me in different ways.
Okay.
So I like it. I know, like you said, most of those artists, as far as storytelling goes, they're fantastic storytellers too.
Yeah.
And they could do a really, really good job at it. But I do watch people read comics, and I see how much time they spend, and I realize, look, they're flipping the page so fast. There's different audiences. So that person who's going to read that comic that one time, that quick, wispy storytelling is fine. That's all they need.
Yeah.
But for that person who's going to read that every couple of months, so that's their favorite story, every time they go back and look at something and they see something new artistically, then I think that's what that style is for. But yeah, it's not for everybody. It doesn't hit every audience. And for like an artist reading a comic, yeah, I love the words, but I'm looking at the art and I want to dive into it and be able to look at it for days. But there's something special about both, and knowing when to do one or the other just comes with time.
Did you ever read Kurt Vonnegut when you were a kid?
No.
Okay. There's a book that I read when I was in 8th grade, Breakfast of Champions. And I've read it probably every 10 years of my life. And it's always a different book every time I pick it up.
Yeah.
I think great art does change with time. It's static, but it's something that can speak to a different part of your life. And I think in comic books, it's the same thing, where you can go back to that material and maybe it's just the words that, it doesn't have to have this incredibly intricate artwork or anything, but it could, or even incredibly intricate plotting. It's just this pure emotional beat that resonates with you, whatever that thing is. And it can have incredibly detailed art that you go into and you break down, you go, Christ, I never even saw this thing in the background that's actually telling you this
foreshadowing
that I didn't see that. They laid this out the whole time. And fuck, you go back and you watch The Sixth Sense again. And you're like, oh, it was yelling at me the whole time what this movie was, but I didn't pick it up the first time I watched it. It's that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, I think like a good example of a great comic book story that doesn't get hindered by time is, say, like the Batman mythos.
Sure.
When you were young, you saw yourself as Robin. When you get older, you might think you're Batman. Then you become a dad, and you're Commissioner Gordon in that story. You go back and read the same story, and depending on where you are in life, you start to see it from different perspectives. And so when I did my creator-owned book a few years back called Eden, it's just about this warrior trying to rescue her missing son. But I wrote that very much from the perspective of being a dad now. I would have never written that story as a teenager, or if I had, I would have spent more time developing the teen character. But I spent that story where the son's missing, and just the agony of trying to get your child back. And even more so, more like, I guess symbolically, if you lose your child in any way, death or anything, just having somebody that you love and doing everything. And I figured that was a great entry point to tell a story, because no matter who you are, no matter what stage of life you are in, guaranteed, live long enough, you will lose someone. Doesn't matter who you are, you will lose somebody that you care about. And I think that was a good idea, at least in my mind, of where to start a comic that could pull everybody in, because you may not have kids yet. But you probably have a mom, or if you don't have a relationship with your mom, you have an idea of what you want as far as being wanted.
Yeah.
And a mom looking for you, or a dad looking. So I was like, everybody probably can start somewhere. Then I lost them as the story went on. They're like, what is this even about? I don't know, but writing that, drawing that just depended on where I was in my life and the expediency that I had to use to draw it. Now I draw that book way more intricately because my kids are older. But even then, I had to draw it faster. Even the way I drew it has something to do with why I was drawing it at all.
Well, I think I was actually going to transition into that book specifically when you mentioned that, because the idea of when you approach material as a kid, kids in peril when you're young doesn't bother you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you read a story about a kid that's in trouble, it doesn't mess with you at all. You approach that as a parent, and it's harrowing. It's impossible. Yeah. It's so difficult. It hits on a different level than it ever would before. And so, Eden is definitely one of those books that would fall under that, where you could see this reading it as a teenager or even younger and picking up this book and having a wildly different experience than
it's like, I just want to see monsters and aliens.
That's it. And it's got that.
Yeah.
If that's what you want, it's got that.
Yeah. I think one movie that did it really well was Prisoners.
Oh,
that movie made my chest hurt the whole time. I was like, man, if that were me, I don't know.
Literally getting goose flesh right now from thinking about that movie. It's one of those ones, an incredible movie.
Yeah.
I will never watch it again.
Right.
I don't need to ever go down that path again.
Yeah.
I'm glad I saw it. Movies don't get more well made. It's the height of craft, from performance, writing. Mm-hmm. Deakins did an incredible job with the cinematography in that thing, but never need to see it again.
Yeah.
That's just, it's too hard. I can't do it.
Yeah, I don't want my mind to live there. I mean, if I watch that movie and one of my kids drives to Pizza Hut, I'm texting every 4 seconds. I'm stressed out. So, yeah.
Dude, well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this today, man.
Anytime.
I appreciate this. It was a pleasure to meet you. So,
same to you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.